They're in there 2 drinks. And
yeah, once the drink, yeah, they're angry.
Right, they're angry.
Yeah.
Or whatever, or they're not there for you. They're paying attention.
Welcome to the first episode of the 9th Street Interview. I'm your host, Nate Stewart. Today, we have a great guest with us, Satana Deberry. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thanks for having me, Nate.
You're incredibly accomplished. You went to Princeton, you got your JD, then you got even your MBA. At that point, the world is almost your oyster. What about North Carolina made you come back?
Well, when I left to go to Princeton, if you told me I was coming back to North Carolina, I would have called you a liar. Right, that was the whole goal. I grew up in rural North Carolina, and thought I was going to end up in New York. And turns out that as I was going through college, I was a sociology major, and so as I was learning about systems and education and class, I got really interested in helping other people and really thinking about how we build systems that allow everyone to succeed as opposed to picking winners and losers. And so I ended up in a career that I hope has helped folks.
You obviously weren't always the district attorney. What made you go from a defense attorney to switching to this new role with all this power?
Well, I was a defense attorney early in my career, and I actually stopped doing that because I did it for about 4 or 5 years, and I did it in my hometown, which small county in North Carolina. And at the age I was ended up representing people I'd grown up with, and those were people that I knew weren't bad people. I knew that they had just, for whatever reason, whether it was a mental health issue, substance abuse issue, economically, they'd been stuck there. They ended up in situations where they were breaking the law or coming into constant contact with law enforcement. And I knew that there wasn't much I could do for them by the time they'd been arrested. And so I started thinking about, honestly, the things I'd learned about in my sociology undergrad, which is that there's systems that determine how our lives go. And so I wanted to get a little bit further upstream.
In North Carolina, they have 100% of discretion of what cases move forward. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Does that mean anything? Like, could someone murder 5 people and comes to your desk and you say no, and then it doesn't go to trial? How far does that power really stretch, and how do you balance that holding that much?
Yeah, that is exactly what that means.
Wow.
And so our job is to take seriously what they bring us, go back and forth about what the evidence is, look at the facts, look at the law, and make a determination. So if somebody kills 5 people and it comes to my desk, that is against the law, right? But then what are the facts? Say the facts are those 5 people were trying to kill that person, right? That they had been jumped in the alley by 5 people. Those facts matter. Right? That's different than somebody who walks into a building with an automatic weapon and shoots 5 people, comes to work and shoots their coworkers, right? And so we have to first look at the law and then look at the facts and make a decision.
Your story reminds me a lot of the other Wes Moore. If you're familiar with Wes Moore, wrote a book where he and another man in his town, same name as Wes Moore, had different support structures and went completely different ways. How do you balance people who had maybe those more traumatic upbringings and still commit crimes that have been in the legal system their whole life and it's really structural?
Yeah, we really do think about what is structural, as well as we ask for mitigation when we can. And one of the things that we do is, one, we focus on the most serious and violent crimes, right? So I very much care about gun violence. I very much care about intimate partner violence. I very much care about impaired driving and child abuse and sexual assault, right? We very much care about those things. Like you and your friends smoking a little weed on LDOC.
Never would happen.
Never
by
would
the way.
happen.
Yeah, no.
But do I care so much about that? As a parent of young adults, I care tremendously about it, right? Because I don't want you doing that. However, as a prosecutor, is that something that's going to make my community unsafe? If you and your friends are just kind of sitting around outside, having a good time, not so much, right? And so we try to balance that, and we say, hey, if we have folks who are charged with something low level, they don't have a record, how can we divert those cases so that we still provide accountability, right? You still have broken the law. We still do want to provide some accountability, but I don't want to ruin the rest of your life for it.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever get worried with that, that the DA is elected by the people, and so do you ever feel kind of that you have to maybe make decisions that are more popular to the people to obviously maintain in office versus kind of what you think doing is right but maybe unpopular? Does that ever cross your mind to balance those two?
Yeah, that crosses my mind every day, especially when I get questions from reporters. And most Americans don't have any interaction with the criminal justice system. To the extent that they do, it's a traffic ticket, right, or a toll in states with toll roads, right?
Yeah.
But they think they know a lot about it because we see a lot of CSI and Law and Order, these procedural shows on television. And so criminal law is like art. People think they know it when they see it. So they don't know everything about a case that we know and that we have to know to be able to make that decision. They just know kind of what's been reported in the news, and everybody has an opinion on that and on how we should do things. And so it is, for us, for me particularly, because I am the elected, it is a challenge to think about what is politically popular as opposed to what is right. And for me, I'm always trying to do what's right, even when that's not politically popular.
Yeah, speaking on what's politically popular, it seems obviously there's been a bit of a paradigm shift recently, and you're in a really interesting spot as you were here kind of throughout the whole kind of cycle shifting of the presidency. You were here before the crackdowns, and now you're here after. Do you think about cases differently, especially ones involving immigrants, with this new kind of heavy ICE presence that's kind of looming these days?
So I was actually elected during the first Trump administration. So I do have some familiarity. Certainly it has not been as intense as
this one
this
seems
time. Right. I think the real concern for me as a prosecutor is the lack of due process in almost all of this. Due process is a fundamental value of American jurisprudence, and when we do not provide people with due process, we get things wrong every time. Now, we get things wrong sometimes when we do provide people with due process, but I guarantee you if we're not using due process, that we are getting things wrong, and we are really impacting the rights of people.
And on that point that you were elected during the first Trump era, he actually signed a bill in 2018 for criminal reform, which is obviously something you're very passionate about, and you've made a big part of your work here. That's obviously seems not as much of a priority anymore, especially of that crowd or as a crowd in general. Why do you think kind of that shift has happened and people are maybe less sympathetic to some of these reforms?
And that's a good question. I don't know if actual people are less sympathetic. I think it also has something to do with politics, and politics shift. Whether regular people's lives shift that quickly, I don't believe they do. But the pandemic, being locked at home and feeling like the world was coming to an end really has impacted people. I mean, you guys probably were in middle school when the pandemic started and know how personally how it's impacted your life and your education. And I think people were just more scared because they never thought anything like that could happen, and then something like that happened. Crime is also very sticky because our news is nationalized and because people spend a lot more time getting their news from social media, which may or may not be correct. They think that everything bad is actually happening to them.
Well, these partisan news outlets get more engagement by stirring fear and outrage. So that's why a lot of these, probably you said earlier, how many people don't really know the exact facts of a certain case. They see the headline or they see what a certain network kind of paints the narrative, and they get outraged without even knowing what's going on.
Sure, and as a human being, fear is evolutionarily critical to your survival, right? You can only eat poison once.
Yeah.
So you gotta be suspicious.
Yeah.
Right? And so that is born into us to be fearful and suspicious, and so stoking that is the quickest way to get people motivated. But it doesn't, I don't think, in the long term benefit us. I think what in the long term benefits us is that we take a look at the society that we're creating and the society that we want. I mean, the truth is that even when people are incarcerated, most of them will come home. And the question for us is, who do we want to come home? Do we want somebody to come home who then has the opportunity to rejoin our communities and be a functioning member of our community? Or do we want somebody who come home with no skills, no attachment to family, no attachment to this community, and then really no incentive not to do that again?
You ran for Attorney General a couple years ago. What's next?
That is a good question. I'm up for re-election next year, and right now my thought is that I will run again. This is a great job. The best job I've ever had has been working for the people of Durham County. This job is also traumatic, and it takes a toll, not just in the public-facing part of it, which we've been talking about, but secondary trauma is real, and not just me, but the folks in my office. We look at autopsy pictures. We deal with victims of sexual assault and personal violence. And we do that every day. And it's not lost on me that when people come into this office or when people see me, that I am a reminder of oftentimes the worst day of their lives. And that really impacts how people interact with you as well. And so I don't know what's next for me. Probably just continuing to be the Durham County DA for a little bit while longer. But we'll see.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. This was such a great opportunity for us and the 9th Street Journal. Really happy we were able to get this done. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.